I had about 5 Heineken bottles in front of me, and I'm sweating, like eating bread rolls, dipping it in the stew, drinking the beers. And he breaks the silence after about 15 minutes and just looks straight at me and says, "You look disgusting." Then I was waiting for the ground to just open up and get me out of there. And this was my little Harajuku moment. It was enormous. And I still to this day remember the memories of just lying in bed going, "Nah, that's it. I'm done.
Enough.
I'm into it."
Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. I am your host, Richard Thompson. Today we have Jamie Milne on the show. Jamie has a number of hats, as you will soon learn. But amongst other things, he is a high-performance mindset coach, a personal trainer, a business owner, a father, multiple world record holder, and is about to embark on a new world record attempt this coming weekend. Sit back and enjoy this chat. It was one of my favorites on the show so far. Jamie Milne,
Here we go.
welcome to the show. Thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, Richard, thank you.
We'll kick things off a little bit different. As someone with your background, and I'd love to know what your morning routine looks like.
Oh, wow. Very simple. Nothing too extravagant. I slide out of bed very early, so I'm an early riser, so anywhere between 3:30 and 4:30.
I saw the read receipt on my text message from this morning was very early.
Oh, that's the lawyer in you guys.
Yeah.
Let me just check the smaller details.
Yeah.
So it was very early, half a lemon and lots of Himalayan sea salt in a schooner of water.
Okay.
That kicks it off. Little bit of breath work, not a lot. Used to do a lot and sit there and huff and puff for a good half hour, but that's sort of reduced now to only a few minutes. I'm a big one on intention, so I go into the day with a bit of intention. Especially, I just look at my list the night before. I'm already thinking about who I'm working with, the conversations I'm having, where my attention's going.
Yeah.
And I find setting that up in the morning, it allows my attention to sort of get in line with my intention.
Yeah.
As cliche as that sounds. And that's pretty much it. But I'm early into it. I'm into bed early at night. I'm up early in the morning, so I'm getting the most of the day.
I like that. I like the act of intention sets you up, because I think a lot of people would be going through the day going, I'm just rolling through rolling to the punches and not really giving that much consideration.
Yeah, it's massive for me. I'm fortunate in my line of work. I get to have conversations with people I actually like, so I really enjoy my work and I take it seriously. So I go into each session or meeting or something, being very clear what I'm sort of bringing to the equation, to the relationships. So, but that's a new thing. I'm talking like the last few years. It hasn't always been like that.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
But that's
then the intention's there, and then that's the morning. Then you let the morning come at you, or have you got anything else?
I used to exercise in the morning, Richard, like a lot of people, really early. But as I've come up to the 4th floor at 45 now, I like to train in gentlemen's hours about 9 a.m. now. So quite fortunate with that. With my schedule, I can make an adjustment for that.
Yeah.
So the morning's a lot of planning, a lot of intention. 2 cups of black coffee, and that's about it, really.
Beauty.
Nice and simple.
Mm-hmm. Now you have a lot of hats, and you've done a lot of things in your life, and currently, right now, are doing a lot of things. How would you describe who you are? Which is a really, really open question.
Yeah.
How would you describe?
I'll try not to be ambiguous. I'll try and be specific. If you've ever seen a Maori spin 1,000 plates at once, that's pretty much me.
Yeah.
A multi-layered, multifaceted Maori. Look, you are right. I've got a few hats on. And I think like a lot of people, I've gotten to a point in my life where I've shifted, and you talk about it a bit, like pivoted. I was a military man for quite some years, and then into the fitness industry, now into the mental performance industry. And so I bring all of that together. I think of it like a mosaic, like all these little different parts that make up the whole. And that works for me. That it really does work for me. So I bring this about to say beautiful, maybe beautiful is not the word, delicate blend of wisdom, life experience and formal education, and mix that up. Like a jovial nature. I'm very sort of happy-go-lucky most of the time, lots of energy, sort of chuck that all in and you've got yourself a broth of some description.
A recipe.
You've got some kind of recipe. It's probably not macro balanced, but it's still a broth nonetheless.
With that tapestry of what makes you, what's the goal?
Oh, my God. You're very good at this. The goal.
What's your purpose?
Yeah, my purpose, look, it truly is to make an impact, like to really make a change. I find I have this unapologetic level of belief in people, like I really do. And when I start a relationship with somebody and we start working together, I really look to have their belief in themselves match the belief that I have for them. Because by the time I'm talking to somebody, there's already this indicator that they're ready for some change, or they're looking, there's that saying, when the desire to change is greater than the desire to remain the same. Change will happen. And it's not anything special that I do by any means. It's just I'm there and they have someone that has that belief. And I have that belief, Richard, I think, based off my experience, my life experience. I've had a very small handful of people believe in me at a time when I really didn't believe in myself. And so that's enabled me, that's perpetuated out to the work that I do. And so I pride myself in that. And if I could summarize it in terms of purpose and intention, it's to guide, be a part of another person's journey to realizing they're so much more capable of anything. It could be business, could be their athletic endeavors, relationships, anything. We're just limited by what's going on in between our ears.
Take me back to that period of time where you didn't believe in yourself then. If that's what's shaped your purpose now and the inspiration now, what was the crucible moments in your life whereby you're at your lowest, I guess, or you didn't have that belief in yourself?
Yeah. I had I remember reading Tim Ferriss's book, and I can't remember whether it was the 4-Hour Workweek or the 4-Hour Body or whatever it was back in the early days. And he talked about the Japanese having I could pronounce this wrong, so I apologize. This is my understanding of it. I think it was Harajuku. It was like a Harajuku moment. And basically it was represented by a complete, change of course. There was a pivotal moment in one's life where you were heading down a particular pathway, this is where you were going, and then bang, either an event happened or a significant emotional event happened, and then we've gone in a completely different direction. And I had one of those moments. In fact, I probably had a couple, but they were very close together. So I was in the military, in the Navy for 7.5 years, spent some time as a chef, I joined the Navy as a chef, pivoted to become a Navy diver, spent a little bit of time going down that pathway, and then I was getting myself set up to go into the police. I wanted to be a police diver, and I was quite young, and short of a long story, I was heading down that wrong pathway enthusiastically, like a lot of men, challenges with alcohol, and so that was a real problem for me when I was younger, and so got into a bit of trouble, got into a drunken fight, which, at the time I'd gone through all the police recruiting. I was ready to go. I made it to the commissioned interview. So it was ticking the box.
Yeah.
You're going to the police college on this day. And it was really in my favour because I was fit. I'd come from the Navy diving school. They were like, oh, this guy's a rock star. This is perfect. And then the Jamie part of me got in there and sort of got in the way. And that created a series of significant events. So obviously, because I had been arrested, I got what is in New Zealand it's called a diversion. So it's like your one chance before you get a criminal record. So I didn't get a criminal record, but in terms of, as you would well know, Richard, in terms of wanting to be a police officer, something to do with the law, like they're not having a bar of that. So they let me go. And I remember
after all the ducks that were in a line for
completely. I remember I had the date, had the letter, And literally, yeah, so that was the same sigh the recruiter made. They're like, we have, in the history of New Zealand police, never had this happen before. Like, well done. You literally, that's what she said. Looked me straight in the eyes, sighed, like, well done. You just ruined yourself a career. And of course, my girlfriend was in the car outside waiting to see how the meeting went. And I came out, just looked her straight in the eyes and said, no, they've dropped me. Like, that's it. And that began a very, very dark path. I started, abusing alcohol. I think I was about 75 kilos, right? Like, great shape. I travelled overseas, made my way through God knows how many pies and field rolls. And essentially I went from 75 kilos, very little body fat, to about 116 kilos in exactly 9 months. So it was kind of like getting pregnant without getting pregnant on beer and pies. And I came home. It was my grandfather's 75th birthday, I think, something like that. So it was quite an important event. And my grandfather was my mentor. He was my exemplar. He was a guy that, amazing man, did his last marathon, I think, at like 70 or 75, back when sort of senior citizens weren't running marathons. Yeah. It took him like 8 hours. Like, he was one of the last finished, like, real rock star in my hometown, coached footy, refereed footy, beautiful man. So I had a lot of respect for him. And back then there was no internet, no Facebook, you couldn't like send photos. Here's me in Westminster, here's me at, Trafalgar Square. So they hadn't seen me for 9 months.
9 months since you were 75 kilo.
Yeah. So then this perfect brown ball walks in the door at 116, dripping wet. And my grandfather, I remember looking at me, didn't say anything, super quiet, which was unusual. We were sitting down at the table, and I'll never forget, it was oxtail stew. I had about 5 Heineken bottles in front of me, and I'm sweating, like eating bread rolls, dipping it in the stew, drinking the beers. And he breaks the silence after about 15 minutes and just looks straight at me and says, "You look disgusting." And I remember sitting there thinking, wonder if he's talking to me. Like, was that it? Maybe he was, I don't know, yeah. Then I was waiting for the ground to just open up and get me out of there. And I sat with it, and I thought, okay, I'll act like nothing's happened. I'll just filled roll or white roll into the stew. And then he says, "Where's my grandson? I can't even see you. I can't, you don't even look like him." Disgraceful.
How old are you?
So at that stage, I was in my mid-20s.
Wow.
And I'm just like, and I politely got up, and I couldn't believe it was coming from him. He had never spoken to me like that in my whole life. Like, honestly, Richard. So I start picking up the plates and cutlery and semi-clearing the table, and I'm thinking, I'm going to burst into tears. Like, everyone's looking, no one's saying anything. So I go out into the kitchen, I'm putting the plates and stuff away, and my stepmom comes in trying to smooth things over, and she says, "Oh, your granddad's maybe had a couple of beers. Don't look, honestly, don't take it to heart." I burst into tears. This is a very long story, but I go to bed. I go to bed that night, and I remember thinking to myself, and I'd had a few drinks, and I remember thinking to myself, like, tomorrow I'm going to get up, I'm going to go for a run. I hadn't done anything for 9 months, obviously. I'll go for a run. I'll just do 5Ks, and I get back into it. And I remember having these thoughts. It was like the hero's return. It was like a Rocky movie. Music kicks in. It's like, tomorrow I'm going to do it. And this was my little Harajuku moment. It was, I mean, I've told this moment in about, 2 or 3 minutes, but it was enormous. And I still to this day remember the memories of just lying in bed going, nah, that's it. I'm done.
Enough.
I'm into it. So I run 5Ks the next day. I think it took me about an hour and a half or something like that. It was the slowest 5Ks that any man has ever done. And that literally from that day on, everything else is history. Like, I never, ever looked back from then. It was like as simple as that. It was very powerful, and some might say, harsh. And I think my grandfather's generation, and that's how they did things. He was a man of his word. He was not, a spade was not a shovel or a set of hedge trimmers. It was definitely a shovel. And I got a genuine serve, and he didn't give a rat's ass who was sitting there. And that was enough. And I think if it was delivered from anybody else, I'm not sure I would have listened.
Yeah. And that obviously came from that message from him to you would appear that it's come from such a place of love, right? To be able to say, I need you to hear this because I love you.
Yeah.
And because I care about you, but you need to hear this because you need to hear it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's incredible.
Yeah, it was very, it was brutal at the time. It got right into the centre and, rung the bell, that's for sure. It was pretty close to the action, that one.
And so from that moment, you get, I guess, without dramatising it, you get your life back on track. Mm-hmm. And it's because of that, do you think that fuels your purpose to help, to be that person in other people's lives?
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure that's the major, it's definitely a contributor. So I can confidently say, whilst, I spent 9 months in, not in wellness, I wouldn't call it disease. It probably wasn't too far off, but I had a glimmer, a peek behind the curtain, I think, of what life can be like for people that, belief in self is lacking. Self-image is not great. Confidence gets a bit rattled for whatever reason. And I was very much feeling less than, like I'd struggle to make eye contact with people. It was always, when the question of, so what do you do for a living? And I used to be really proud that I was a Navy man and
there's an identity to that,
right?
Oh,
huge. It was my label. It was my, story when I'd go to a party or something. Like, what do you do for a living? And it was always exciting. And now I had this almost like tarnish, this big cross against my name. It was like, well, you were this and you could have potentially been this,
police,
but you decided to be an absolute muppet. And so I had that. And so that led me down the pathway of... Yeah, and I think to immaturity and things like that, and inability to take responsibility and ownership. It was everyone else's fault, and
sure,
like a lot of people. So I didn't really have that ability to have that self-governance, and so alcohol was easy to get hold of. I had a natural propensity to it, so that didn't help either. And the rest is...
Is that the culture in the Navy?
Look, it was. Yeah, it really was. It was a power drinking culture and everything revolved, going to the college. It was, we were bathed, is a word I'd probably use, in stories of, when you go to Singapore, you do this. When you're in Hawaii, this is the bar to go to. When you're in Thailand, you do this. And of course, it's sensationalized and glorified. And to be honest, I didn't need much encouragement. I was like, point me in the right direction. This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in that 9-month period, are you just escaping all of that discomfort through that, or are there moments in that period of time that you can remember whereby you're grieving or whereby you're struggling just to have those conversations with yourself, or are you that far away from the pain that you're just turning to the vices?
Yeah, that's a really good insight, Richard. And I actually think you're right, because I was just thinking then when you first asked the question and then when you finished with that, I felt very disassociated. Yeah. It was like the pain and everything was in a lovely little chest of drawers, like very far away. Yeah. And I was over here being Jack the Lad and life of the... Well, at least I thought I was life of the party. Other people probably got a different perspective. Yeah.
But not until... that moment with your grandfather that you're having that conversation with yourself almost.
Yeah. I just, to really summarize it, I just felt like an embarrassment, like a complete and utter failure. And I didn't have the wisdom or the ability to have an objective view. I was so subjective. It was like, you are an absolute shit kicker. Like, you are a window licker. You are an embarrassment. Like, who goes that far and then does that? It's like, oh, you do. So it was horrible, that sort of inner dialogue. And I remember it clearly. Like I remember it very clearly. It was horrific.
What would you tell to your younger self now? What would you tell to that kid who's, I guess, even when you first got that news from the police to say that you weren't going to cut it because of your own actions, and then also through that period of 9 months, what would you be telling someone, let's say, in that same moment, or telling yourself in that moment?
Yeah, that's
after the experience, after everything you've learnt now?
Yeah, so that's another great question. This is good.
20 years of life experience, right?
Yeah.
To then, what would you go back and what would you be saying to yourself?
Yeah, I think the very first thing, and we touched a little bit on our conversation on the phone the other day, is that things are never one-sided. They never are. I mean, hindsight, hence the saying, is a luxury. When we can look back, like I can look back now, first thing that springs to mind is I think that recruiter, whilst I really liked it, we had a great relationship, she was lovely with me, but that delivery was harsh. I was like, oh my God, But I look back and I think she actually probably did me a favour. I didn't have the maturity to be a man of the law. Like, I would have made a mistake eventually, and it, given my history as a young man, it probably wouldn't have been great. So I think to myself, I was more than likely not suited for the job as well. And so whilst I had ticked the boxes, but that was probably largely due to my physicality, my military background, the recruiters had favoured me, I think there would have been carnage on the horizon. So that's the luxury of hindsight. Advice I would give now is I would look for the other side. It's like, and what I mean by that, when we have these negative, or when I have negative experiences in my life, even if it's emotions, even if I'm really sad, there has to be somewhere in my life where I'm happy. It's just I can't see it at the time because I'm so subjective. I'm so sad about, whatever. The dog's not well. So I'm like really upset about that. And in that moment, it takes a very wise mind to be able to see that. But there's also so many things that are not sad. Like, I've had so many great years with this dog. And by the way, my dog's fine if anyone's concerned.
This is metaphoric.
Yeah, this isn't me trying to be very clever. Dog's fine. But, we perhaps are blinded to the fact that there's so much in life to be happy about.
Yeah.
And so, and it can be an event as well. Like, I've got something happening that's really challenging and really adverse. But in that moment, there's also so many things that are not challenging. So there's the equal complementary opposite. And I think, and again, I apologize if I pronounce this wrong, I didn't do classical studies at high school or uni, but I think one of the ancient Greek philosophers was, is it Heraclitus or one of those guys? I know it's not Aristotle, but I think it's Heraclitus or Heraclitus. He believed that even 2,500 years ago, that there were always complementary opposites happening at all times, daytime, nighttime, man, woman, up, down.
Sad, happy.
Light,
dark.
Positive, negative.
Yin, yang.
Yin, yang. Yeah, exactly. Great example. The different theories, and depending on who you talk to, think that they can't happen at the same time, but there's an overwhelming support of that they are actually happening all of the time, and that hence balance. In chemistry, things have got to balance. Mathematics, the numbers have to, it has to add up and balance and equal.
Yep.
And this is no different.
It's the ecosystem. It's the balancing of it all.
Yeah, the dichotomy of what's going on. And dichotomy, to my understanding, is complementary opposites. So I look for that now. And so the advice I'd give, this is a very long answer, I apologize, Richard. Great. So the answer I would give that 25-year-old is, I'd say, buddy, just slow down a little bit, pause, have a little look for all the benefits and opportunities that have come out of what is perceived as a real setback. But yeah, even it up. Look for the setbacks, look for the drawbacks, look for the negatives, and balance that all up. And yeah, balance the perception.
Yeah, I like that. And I think when we're under stress, there's enough research to show that our aperture, what we focus on, it becomes really narrow. And so you are only just looking at the fact of that my dog is really unwell and nothing else is actually relevant, or nothing else is coming through into your actual vision or in certainly in your mind's eye with dealing with a very, very stressful or unfortunate or difficult moment. And the strength, to your point, is to be able to broaden that aperture, and to be able to see the periphery and to go, okay, it's not just this problem. There's all this other stuff that is good as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But as I said to you on the phone, like it's so challenging still, like even with that knowledge, to be able to just roll with the downs, like to go, oh yeah, that's great. I'm sure this is horrendous. This is a really, really bad outcome.
Yeah.
But I'm so stoked because there'll be something good from it.
Yeah. I've just broken my leg. Oh, this is incredible.
This is
This
the
is
best.
exactly what I needed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or but I guess it's being kind to yourself to have the strength to know that will happen.
Yeah.
You will see the good of it. And as I said to you with Michael Jordan's gym strength and conditioning coach, how he talked about just taste the canvas, right? When you get knocked down, taste the blood in your mouth, smell the canvas, and just be there for a moment so you can really absorb that feeling and not just be so reactive to go, how do I get out of this discomfort? Because to your point of the yin and yang, like you've got to have, the relationship has to be equal. You've got to feel joy. You've got to have something to compare it against.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean? And so then there's some value in going, you don't want to cower in the corner and just be victim your entire existence after that experience, after that, let's say, traumatic event. But you want to be able to go, okay, what are the sensations here? This is sad. I am unhappy. I am traumatized, or I'm dealing with this. It's not ideal, but it is some sort of experience, and I've got to absorb it, feel it, and so that I can use that to my benefit. Going forward.
Yeah, so well said. I love that. When you said that the other day on the phone, I was like, that's one of the best things I've heard in a long time about that Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
So good. Like just a really good suggestion and thought process. Like we just don't do that. And even to piggyback off what you're talking about, Richard, like I look at all the self-help books and the positive psychology and self-development books, of which I'm a major fan. Don't get me wrong. Like my bookshelves are full of them, and I think, God, they've made some money. But as I've sort of aged and talking about this objectivity, not getting caught up with the narrow view, I think to myself, there's not many people that talk about that. The actual, it's all good to force and all this positive thinking and challenge the negative thinking and be steadfast with your thoughts. And it's like, well, buddy, it's not that easy. We're not going to go through life without setback. It's going to come in thick and fierce. And I've got a life that is absolutely sprayed with, it's a shit fight, like an absolute shit fight. And I would be naive to think that that's not going to stop. Like and if anything, it's going to magnify as I sort of, in my personal life, try and be more successful and climb the ladder and the things that I do.
Achieve more.
It's going to come at a higher cost.
100%.
And I'd be
and it's
silly.
the view, I guess. It's the view, I think, is a dangerous one to say, I want to try to avoid those difficult moments or those challenges. Like, how do I pivot my mind so that I don't need it? I don't have to deal with it. But it's, as you said, like you've to achieve more or to keep broadening what we're able to do.
Yeah.
Comes with, it's that balance. You've got it. There is a cost, and you're going to experience the unless you have no aspirations, you're going to have setbacks. And that's right. the purpose of setting a goal and going after it, is that there is risk.
Yeah.
And I'd love to talk to this now, right? Is the sense that this weekend coming, you've got a world record attempt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which, as I understand it, is how many full push-ups? Is that how it is?
Yeah. I think like chest to ground push-ups. You're right. Yeah, full push-ups. Yeah.
In an hour.
Yeah.
And and we talked about, like, I think that's a great goal in the sense that it's a great example of something to do for everyone to take away from, right? Because for a goal to be achieved, a goal worth achieving, there has to be some risk that it's not possible.
Yes.
Or you won't achieve it, right? And therefore that opens the door to the possibility of all of what we talked about, all the bad, the negative, the downside, the trauma, the things didn't go to plan. Whereas if it was a lock and I think you've downplayed your own this goal itself, because you are in a physical condition that you're very confident you can achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
So at the moment, the record is
or 884 or 86. I always forget.
hopefully
It's one of
it's
those.
not within a few. It doesn't come down to a couple.
Yeah.
But based on your training, your preparation, your mental strength, you are quietly confident that you'll be able to do it.
Yeah, for the first time. Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Yep.
And but there is, and I can appreciate though, there is an element of, well, if I can do it, then it mustn't be that spectacular.
Yeah.
Because you don't feel because you've done a number of world record attempts previously.
Yeah.
Some successful, some unsuccessful.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me why this is different, because you're more confident than you have ever been in achieving it.
Yes.
Why do you think then are you less amped because of that? It's still a world record. It's still something that no one on the planet has ever done, if you achieve it.
Yeah.
But just because you're able to do it, you've designed your body in a way that you're able to do it.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I wish I could give a very tangible answer. Because there's a number of things that spring to mind. You are right. I water it down a little bit. And in a very quick example, I was bench pressing the other day with a friend of mine, and he took the mickey out of me. All these push-ups have really helped my bench press, by the way. Yeah, so just shout out anybody that wants to. I've been trying to grow my chest since I was about 12. It just doesn't grow. So, but I've fallen in love with bench press, and so it's started to get quite good. Significant weight for a fella my size. And so we were putting some weights on the other day, and a mate of mine laughed at me. Now, he is literally 3 times the size of me. He is enormous, big Maori guy. And he said, should I put 150 on the bar for you? And started laughing. I said, no, I can't do 150, but I'll do 130, which I thought's great for me. And then he said, man, you're just so strong. And then I said to him, yeah, I am, but to give perspective, I remember bench pressing at about the age of 14 or 15. So I'm 45. So there's
You've been bench pressing for 30 years.
Yeah, and it's grown quarter of an inch. So we've had 30 years of water under the bridge, and I watered it down, and I said to him, mate, I've been doing it for 30 years. So imagine if you had been doing something for 30 years.
100%.
I would like to think that there would be, some significance and, some level of mastery, some understanding. You would be in the top 5% of the people you're hanging out with. And he said, I didn't think of it like that. So, moving the lens over to the push-ups, I can think back to being 16 at the Naval College and trying to have a push-up competition with the instructor and getting like 2 or something like that. But again, I was 16. Been doing push-ups for a very long time. And I think of the thousands we did at the Naval Diving School, just getting absolutely beasted and crushed with push-ups. And I think, well, it seems all a bit organic, really, that I should have some level of competence with push-ups. And I think that lends itself to the calm, sort of serene approach I have to the weekend, whereas other things I've done, I've really I chased Kane Eckstein's world record for strict pull-ups. Like this body's not designed for pull-ups, but somewhere in between my brain and my mouth, I thought, well, surely I could do 8,000 pull-ups. And it turns out after 3 attempts, I'm a mile off the mark. So this particular one, it just seems kind of organic, and yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. But I think it's something that I hope in hindsight you were able to reflect on it pending its success, to be able to go, that was pretty cool though, right? Because there'll be a time in your life that you won't be able to do 1,000 push-ups in an hour. And for you to reflect on that, to say, and maybe there is some other person in the world that could do 2,000 in an hour but hasn't tried, and you've got to be able to wrestle with that.
He'd be from Sippy Downs or something like that, for sure. He'd be some, and it would be a woman. Yeah. A lady from Narimba's just coming in hot. I can see it now. It'll be right.
But
all power to it.
All you can do is do your best, right? And
yeah,
and if that's the current world mark, then that's brilliant.
Yeah. Look, and I think the more I hear you talk about it too, Richard, the more I think a lot of it as well. I think the things that I'm proud of, and I know you would understand this with what you've done and what you've achieved and being a world champion, is that it's so much more than the event. So whilst the event, I have a serene and calm approach, it's one of the many plates I'm spinning. And like at the same time, opening up another business in Noosa and business in Warana, and there's a documentary, like there's all these things, and I've got 3 children. I mean, the list goes on. And I think that when mature adults like ourselves and others like us that are going after something that's bigger than them, but they're also juggling, they're spinning the plates, and I think that deserves a tip of the hat. I think well done to those people.
I definitely think Guinness needs to have a separate book for world records of fathers of 3.
Yeah.
Like let's plan it.
Well, geez, I might get on the cover of that one.
Few of them.
Yeah, I can send them a photo, a suggested pic for the cover.
Yeah. But you're right, and that's the value, right? And I'd love to talk about, though, with those spinning plates, about what we discussed, sort of like the cost of high performance, or the cost of pursuing something, because similar to the yin and yang, you can't take, I guess, energy out of one bucket without removing the energy from another.
Yeah.
And so how do you manage that with being all those hats?
Yeah. Look, I understand a little bit, and I won't go too far down this pathway because there'll be obviously lots of differentiating views on it. I'm very aware of like my values. What do I value? What's really important and what's a high priority? And my business and the community and the network within my business is very high, and so it would get the lion's share of my attention and focus. I live by a schedule and an agenda, and literally I schedule in down to the wire. When I'm meditating, when my daughter's getting time, when my son's getting time. Some may argue that's micromanaging, but that's how my world works. And that ensures that I'm sort of spreading that attention, which is such a scarcity throughout my world. And that's how I do it. And it seems to work. But you're right, there's some areas that would be really lacking in attention, but I literally just do my best to ensure that these areas are getting touched. But I certainly start with like those highest valued areas, which is, my health, my mental health, the business and things like that, my education and learning, and then it kind of hierarchies its way through there. And that seems to work in my world.
Yeah, I like that, and I like the use of the calendar, or the use of the proactively apportioning time ahead of it, because that's the intention bit that you just talked about at the start, right? To go, I'm intentionally creating time and energy for this, and this, rather than just rolling through the day and going, well, see what happens.
Yeah, I could sit here and waffle off Parkinson's law and the law of vacuum and all these lovely phenomenons, universal laws that are out there. But essentially, in my mind, if I don't schedule that time, it'll get gobbled up by something, which will generally be a distraction, or somebody else will slam what they want in that time. So it's like, well, I can't do that because I'm picking up my daughter from school. I can't do that because that's when I'm bench pressing with my friend. I can't do that. And I put my high priorities in first, and then everything else goes in around it.
Yeah. I like that a lot. The question I first have for you is, why world records on that side of that, on that specific plate that's spinning? Why do that for you?
I think it's a pathway I've found myself on. So I was a competitive amateur boxer. At that time, I was also navigating a very bad relationship with alcohol. So I loved to party and I binge drinked, and that was my sort of thing. So I was one of those people that used alcohol for celebration and disaster. So if I did well at a tournament, I'd celebrate for 4 days.
So if you won the boxing,
Yeah.
you'd drink for 4 days. And if you lost, you drink for 4 days.
4 days, yeah, that's right. And so it was two different sides of the same coin. And so that was my sort of early 20s, teenage years as well. And then I got right into CrossFit when it first started.
Okay.
And I think I did one of the first coaches courses when it came to Australia. It would be 20 years ago, close to 20 years ago. And so I got right into that, made it to the regionals as an individual back when normal people could actually go. And whereas now it's like superhuman people. And I felt like I was competitive, like I was doing well. Ultra marathons as well, I've sort of done since I was in my early 20s. Yeah. Been on the podium a handful of times and was competitive and doing well. And then I found as I aged, these sports that I love, I mean, I see there's like masters boxing in Australia is huge. That wasn't a thing. And I used to think, boxing when you're a bit older is dangerous. And now I actually need my brain for my profession. So I've got that spinning. So I've got to look after it. CrossFit, no chance. Got more chance of flying in the air than competing with it.
Well there.
Yeah, they're doing well there. So then, these ducks are dropping at a great rate of knots. And then I'm a big fan of blazing my own trail. And that started with a thing that I would call journey running. Like I ran from Melbourne to the Sunshine Coast. I ran New Zealand 3 times, UK twice, Western Australia, around Tasmania. And I love this average of 80 Ks a day. And then the likes of Ned Brockman and some of these other, like Tim Franklin's running around the world at the moment. And then I kind of think, well, I'm not really that special anymore. This is not really, it's lost that exclusivity for me in my mind. And whilst that might sound a little bit self-absorbed, it's a little how my mind works. It's like that trail that I was blazing by myself, or what at least I thought by myself, is now it's a public walkway. So I'm like, right. And so I started looking at the world records, and I think I've maybe had a crack at about 12, I think, something like that, 12 or 13. But I'll be honest, even that now, I'm starting to think, okay, maybe it's time to look at something else. But I think that's probably the most honest answer I can give you. It was like, where's the exclusivity? It's like you said, no one's, someone's done it. This is the best in the world. Okay, I'll try that. And that seems to suit me at my age at the moment and where I'm at, whilst I can. Yeah.
Because I like it in the sense that there is it's so polarizing, the event, in the sense that you either win or you either get it or you don't.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. It's not like business or a relationship where the goal is to stay in business. Stay in the relationship.
Hang in there, buddy. Yeah.
You can't win business, right? But you can definitely win a world record.
Correct.
Or earn it. But what comes with that is the risk of not.
That's right. Yeah.
And so how have you dealt with that, in the sense that you put it out there in the world that, yes, I'm going for this, and then you don't achieve it?
Yeah.
How do you manage through that?
Yeah, that's evolved a lot for me over the years, and where I'm sort of at now is I've really fallen in love with the process and the journey. And excuse my terminology, but I'm like a goals whore. Like I love them, goals for everything. And where I'm at now, I tend to establish a goal. It's like I need something. I need where am I going? I need some kind of coordinate. And it's like, here I am. Okay, this is the goal. And then I'll grab it and I'll pop it away. And then I think, okay, what do I need to do to get there? What's the process? What's the journey? What am I doing every single day that's going to increase the probability of me getting that? And what it seems to have done for me, Richard, is it's turned down the dial of like the emotional roller coaster. Like if I feel like, I'm moving the needle closer, I trained so well today, the needle's moving. Or, subsequently it's the 180. Oh, geez, I just trained like shit. Or I ate, a whole packet of Tim Tams watching Yellowstone. Like, my life, I can't, I'm a failure, And then the needle's moving the other way. So I'm off that roller coaster. It's like, okay, all I need to do, drink 4 litres of water, get 8 hours sleep, make sure I'm doing training, which is just sort of a default. So it's like it's these little micro things. And what seems to happen for me now is I've fallen in love with that process, and I've noticed how that's kind of perpetuated out into my life. I think better, and even if I think, like if I even bring it right down to I suppose a physiological level or a neurological level, getting more oxygen to my brain, neurons are firing better, I can have better conversations, I'm generally in a much better mood, and that's all because I'm following a process and a journey to get to a destination.
Yeah.
So the destination almost becomes, it's there at the start, and then
it's enough to almost warrant the journey or create the journey.
That's right.
But certainly it's the journey that's
and I've fallen in love with that. And I don't know if it's a saying or something. It's like if you speak to somebody that climbs a mountain, a lot of the time they're not going to share about the view. It's the climb that got there. They remember hanging off a tree by one arm and grinding and grunting and beasting their way up there on all fours.
Yeah.
And the view's nice.
Yeah.
But the climb was what most people remember.
Yeah. I butchered a moment when I was talking to my good friend Nick Quinn on this show about that. The one thing that someone like you and me, the worst thing that can happen at the top of that mountain is that there are no more mountains to climb.
Oh, jeez.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not doing it. The value is the climb. So the best thing that can happen is just another mountain to go up, right?
Yeah.
Because that's and I find, there's a balance between being able to be, to give yourself the compliments, or at least understand the self-value of what you achieve. But even in here, like with what we've done in the firm and where we're recording, like you look back at 3 months ago, this was a shell.
Yeah.
6 months ago, it was a dream. 9 months ago, it didn't exist.
Yeah.
And then you look around and you go, man, this is incredible.
Yeah.
But it's not how I think. It's I just want the next mountain.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm not interested in reflecting on what's been achieved, because I'm not doing it for that. All I'm wanting, like you said, is to have the purpose to climb and the journey of the next thing. And it's not. And I used to be when I even was a kid, I was like, I'm definitely not going to be the person that is, I'll be happy when I achieve X, right? Or when I drive this car, or when I have this much in the bank.
Yeah.
But I'm very aware now that I am only happy when I'm on a journey towards something.
Yeah. How good is that?
Whatever that is. Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't matter, like, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant what that is, what that goal, what you want to achieve, truly, because you get it and you go, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
It's not going to fulfill you, whatever that is.
Looking around at the top of the mountain, where's these other mountains of it?
We're done. You're cooked. Whereas the journey of that mountain is the relevant piece.
Yeah.
And so
good.
But I do love, and we talked about the other day about the man in the arena, and that by putting yourself out there for an attempt and these people like Ned, like Tim, like you, when you are placed at a position where you can win or fail, that's you in the arena. And you are, by the sounds of it, always prefer to be that person than be in the stands.
Yeah.
Casting your own judgment on the person in the arena.
Yeah. Yeah. I certainly, I think I've done like a support crew role once. It's certainly not something I would pride myself on. I love being in there and everything that goes with that. I love all the stuff you shared there just about a journey. It's just it just really resonates with me, like, very deeply, because for me it's just so much more than the actual event. The event is I certainly wouldn't call them insignificant. It's just there's so much more that's not the event. My self-belief, I spent a lot of my youth with such low self-belief, low self-image. I could look in the mirror and really be dissatisfied with what was, talk about the man in the mirror and the man in the arena. I'd be looking at my reflection and really dissatisfied with what I saw. Self-confidence, self-esteem, how much I valued myself was very low. And so through this journey of all these different little things, whilst it's dressed up as an athletic endeavour, it represents so much more for me. And that's been phenomenal. I'll be forever grateful that my body's been able to do some of these things, win or lose. It's like, wow, what I've got from it is I can't pay for it.
Yeah.
Can't go up to Aldi and chuck a few pineapples over the counter. Like this
Just
stuff,
for that.
they're earned. These things are earned.
And I think the goal then, or the what you're trying to achieve, is finding a goal that resonates with you. It's probably not surprising that people struggle in the goal setting stakes and probably the reason why they become sheep, or they become just happy with the monotony, because you need a goal that aligns with your values. You need a goal that is big enough for you to be motivated and provide that discipline, but not too big that it's unachievable, or that it's that even your own mental strength can get head around.
Yeah.
And you also obviously need to want it. And then you set those parameters up, you've got the goal that will fuel the journey, which is obviously the reason why we're doing it in the first place. But it's, I don't know, it's not nothing to find that right drive.
Yeah. And I think you're right. When things are lined up through those particular, those different lens, values, what's important, we are more resilient. We can roll with the punches when things are not going our way. We can take the setbacks, can be hit back a little bit and like, oh, Christ, we've got that tenacious resolve, the belief is undoubtable. It's always going to be there. The dial might get turned down a little bit, but I've found in my experience, it's given me the ability to hang on. I think about, people often ask me about mental toughness. They say like, oh my God, your mental toughness. And I'm sure you've been asked this 6,500 times. And I think, if I could summarize mental toughness, it's just being able to focus on the task. Keep your focus there. And I literally think that having that something to focus on, hold the focus. It's like the people that last the longest are the ones that can focus on the task at hand. As soon as we give in to, whether we want to call it the inner critic, inner dialogue, negativity bias for all the psychologists out there, we're done.
Yeah.
But if you can hold that focus, it's those ones, the tenacious people that believe so strongly in their journey, their process towards that outcome, that objective, that goal, in business, life, fitness, athletics. They're the mentally tough ones.
Yeah, really, really well said. The purpose comes into it, I think. And if you've got, that inner critic, those doubts, the way you talk to yourself when in those difficult moments, if the purpose isn't aligned, or if you're not truly sold on it, then you're going to cave because it's not worth it. Right?
That's right.
Like, it's the same reason why we brush our teeth every day or twice a day, because we know that the pain of getting an infected tooth and going to the dentist is far worse than not just enduring 2 minutes or 4 minutes a day of brushing your teeth. You know what I mean?
Like a confession session.
Yeah, right.
I'm about 3 minutes and some mouthwash.
There you go.
Yeah,
and so you rather the drive or the purpose of your actions need to be strong. Otherwise, when it gets challenging, and that's a great example. I feel for me is about this place is that I had. I won't go into too much detail, but we had this purpose of what we're trying to achieve here, right? Both in the podcast studio and the law firm, and it was a pivot from sport, but it was very much of a belief that I wanted to achieve and continue to, and then it was about the financing of the whole operation, and I had this pathway to get the finance in a way that we thought was a lock. And it was getting to the end of last year, and the fit-out's already started, lease is already signed, employment agreement's already entered into. And then for, an oversight outside of my control, that option was no longer in existence. And so then for a moment, we had no finance. And I had all this liability and exposure.
I took a deep breath for you just then. I was like,
Yeah. And then I reflect on that because it was probably 2 or 3 minutes, literally time of 2 or 3 minutes where I was, this is over. This is no good.
wow.
And this is the aperture, right? This is where it's like,
That's
I'm
right.
not seeing the broader scope of it. I'm just seeing this problem.
Yeah.
And it's no longer an available option. And I was like, for a couple of minutes, literally only for a couple of minutes, I was like, this is the worst news. This is no good.
Wow.
And then after literally after a couple of minutes, I was like, the purpose rebooted, or the purpose like came through me and was
Yeah.
like, no, you got to find a different way.
Yeah.
What's another way?
Oh,
and so I
I
sat
heard
down, worked out there was actually probably 4 different ways
Yeah.
to get the money, and the second best option, other than the first, came off. So
Wow.
within a week, but it was a tight week. It was a stressful week.
Yeah, yeah.
Of going, but it was naive of me not to have that backup either. To go, in the front of my mind, right?
Yeah.
To be able to go, similar to you as a mid-20-year-old, you're no longer going in the police force.
Mm.
For you to go, that's okay. I'm going to go. This is my next step.
Yeah.
You didn't contemplate that.
No.
It was just like, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm done.
And then
Yeah.
they say you can't, and you're like, oh man.
Oh God.
And it took me a few minutes to go, okay, what are the other options here?
Yeah.
And
Do you think a lot of that sort of mindset that you have here, Richard? You think you get a lot of that through, your fitness endeavors? Does
I
that
think-
develop that?
Yeah, I do. I think also
Adaptability.
you've got to come up against some adversity.
Yeah.
That resilience, that training. It's a strength training, right?
Yeah,
Of your brain, almost.
Yes.
And you can to a certain degree, you can probably simulate that endurance by, I don't know, putting yourself through the rigors of cold plunge or
Yeah.
underwater breath holding, or putting yourself in challenging situations to see how your brain reacts.
Yeah.
But nothing is more of a lesson than life experience.
Yeah.
And dealing with really challenging moments.
Yeah.
That I think helps.
Yeah, totally. I've had this always ticking in the back of my mind. It's like endurance is like the currency of life. It's like the people that have got that resilience. That I know it's a word that's just a hot word. It's out there, but I honestly think when people truly get it, like truly, like tenacity trumps the talent all day long.
Yeah, and and then saying that as well, like, and I love that. But I think there's also not surprising that you have fallen in love with endurance sport, right? That you go do these incredible journeys of running around Tasmania because
That's beautiful. Yeah.
but even this weekend coming, it's still an endurance sport. It's strength endurance, but you're still enduring an hour of work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's, in a
Push
sense,
up every 3 seconds.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I'm
I told you.
Oh no!
It literally is a push up every 3 seconds
Yeah. Oh,
for
my God.
an hour, right? And
Yeah.
it's not surprising because it is everything. Endurance is everything, right? How much can you endure
Yeah,
is essentially what we're dealing with in life, in sport, in all of it.
that's right. Yeah.
And by virtue of the for endurance to come into play, there's got to be stress. Otherwise, it's not endurance at all. So you need to embrace that, and to be able to be so comfortable in that moment to go, yeah, this is what we wanted.
Yeah.
But for the firm, right, that everything, and serendipitously, like all the ducks were lining up in a row. Like, I don't think that anyone has. It's been incredible. Other than that, and so it was the very first thing where the fork was in it, and I was like, this is no good.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I've never been exposed like this, and I've been, prior to this, fairly risk adverse.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay. But yeah, I think life experiences help you manage through that. And like you said, I mean, we talked about it, and I'd love you to, before we finish up, talk about that, the Viktor Frankl,
Yeah.
because this is what we're talking about, right? When
That's
it comes
right.
to dealing with Viktor Frankl being the psychologist and the author of
Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah.
how he deals with, that stress.
Yeah, he has he came up with the concept, the psychological principle of, and he talks about stimulus and response. So something happens, an event or anything really. There is a stimulus, and it makes its way through all of our senses, and then we make it mean something, And in that little moment between stimulus and response is a space. And in that space is our opportunity to make things mean something else, or to pause, to be calm, to slow down, process things. And there's a real beauty in that pause. And essentially, it's a difference between responding and reacting. And the more I read about it and the more I learn about this one little simple principle, I just think it's phenomenal and can really be a superpower for all of us. I think it's easier said than done. And I think too, perhaps uncomfortable conversations, heated conversations, difficult conversations, it's very hard to pause and be calm. And because I think, who makes good decisions when we're agitated, angry or frustrated?
That's right.
None of us. But in calm, we can make good decisions.
Yeah.
Time slows down a little bit. In a lot of sports, it's great to be calm if you can. Some sports you haven't got time to be calm. But in that space, that's where the magic can happen. But it's an interesting principle.
Jamie, this has been incredible. Before you go, we do have the Fast Five, which we ask everyone. So the first one is the number one tip for people looking to be more successful in their life.
Yep. This is me trying to pause. You're like, these are quick fire questions, mate. Come on.
Take as long as you want to answer, but they're just
A lot of lawyers say take as long as you want, mate. Which generally costs a bit of money.
The time's costing.
Yeah. Take your time, Jamie. You're on the clock, by the way. Success. Look, Christ, I think, no, all roads don't lead to Rome, so I'm not going to use that one. I think I'll speak from my experience. I think mentors are important, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, like an exemplar. And I think they don't necessarily have to be alive either. I think given the internet and things like that today, if people fancy the Stoics and they like what Marcus Aurelius and the rest of them are going on about, there's his book Meditations, there's stuff online.
Yeah.
I think you talked about Ryan Holiday.
Yeah.
So neither dead or alive, and I think it's a bit of success leaves clues, mirroring. What do they do? How do they eat? How do they breathe? How do they feel? How do they schedule their day? What are the things that they do? And modeling behavior and success. If you're fortunate enough and you can afford a great mentor, then that's another option. And even if you're more fortunate and you can work under a person that you're inspired by for whatever reason, then that's great too.
Yeah.
But I think modeling behavior is important. And in my life, I've invested a lot of money in spending time with people that I just think, I would love to aspire to be like, their behaviors, their professionalism, their attributes, character.
Yeah.
So that's what I would suggest.
Brilliant. Number one tip for someone looking to find a bit more happiness in their life.
Yep. Happiness. I always struggle with that word now. I had it broken down the other day. I love linguistics. Someone said have penis. And so I'm like, have penis. Now, every time I hear happiness, I'm like,
penis.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, no. Okay. But anyway, the happiness, the pursuit of happiness, I think it's understanding, and a lot of people get this, it's not a destination. And I think it's taking an inventory of our lives and going, look, honestly, what truly makes me happy? Not what makes my wife happy, whilst that is important, not what makes my husband happy, and not necessarily what makes my kids happy, unless that actually makes you happy, that your kids are happy. But I think it's, what did Shakespeare say? To thine own self be true. Like, be true with yourself. What sets your soul on fire? It's like one of the most powerful things on this planet is a human soul on fire. Watch someone doing what they truly love.
Yeah.
I made the reference to meeting you in person for the first time, Richard. It just, you reeked in a good way of the word congruence. It's like, I'm a lawyer, I'm a high performer, and as soon as I met you, I'm like, yeah, there we go. Like, look great firm, amazing. Like, you are congruent. You're in alignment. You are doing what you love. So I stand back and go, inspiring, awesome.
Thank you, man.
So yeah, I mean it sincerely. So I might need a lawyer soon too, by the way. So I'm just brown nosing, but like legitimately, it's what do you truly love,
Yeah.
and fall in love with that, lean in with that. It's not about being selfish with those things. It's about being self-full. If you love being in the ocean, go and get in the ocean and surf. If training's your thing, make your time for your training with your friends or yourself. You know, whatever. But to thine own self be true. Shout out to Shakespeare.
I love that so much. And I think to your point about the kids, let's say, or your spouse, their happiness is important, right?
Absolutely.
But that's not the goal either, right? In the sense that you want to be present for them, but they're also in charge of their own happiness.
Absolutely.
And you really can't be the best version of yourself for them, which is the only capacity you can be, unless you are true to yourself
That's right.
and following that path.
And I think I tell you who does, in my experience, Richard, who does struggle with a bit of that is mums, especially. Like I work with a lot of mums, and they put the kids first, and I get it in theory, like I get it on its merit, but it's like, well, if you're miserable, like the kids aren't getting a great version of their mum. You know, we use the metaphor of when in the highly unlikely event the plane's going down and a gas mask, an air mask, you know, put it on yourself first.
Yeah.
Before the children.
Yeah, because you need to be the best
You
version.
need to be the best version. And it's a great metaphor. Qantas do it really well when you're flying domestically. But do you know what I mean? I think just be true to yourself.
I love that.
Yeah.
Number one book, most gifted or recommended?
Wow. Just one recently, actually. So I'm what is it called? A bibliophiliac.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, bibliophiliac apparently is a lover and reader of books. Okay. So I've gone from, you know, not a great education as a young man to being more formally educated as an adult and fallen in love with books. Great. So it's a great question. So out of like a plethora of books, most recent one by a guy, Shane Parrish. He has a website, Farnham Street, and I think his podcast is the Knowledge Podcast. Okay. He was a spy, a very high-level spy. Comes from a psychological background, and he has authored a book called Clear Thinking. Happy to drop it off for you too, because I can't put it down.
Yeah, wow.
Unbelievable. And he dives into a lot of Viktor Frankl's
theories.
Principle. Oh, very difficult to put down.
Okay. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Your most influential person in your life?
Easily. Grandfather.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Which is a great story, and I appreciate the vulnerability.
Yeah, I might have probably gobbled up a few minutes of that story,
no,
but
I loved it.
But it was.
I was right there.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, he's wow. I've got to be very careful. I'll probably get emotional, but he, I would describe him as unapologetically masculine, but a true gentleman. Like in my hometown, you know, refereeing the footy, very gang affiliated. Dangerous to be a referee when you got two opposing gangs playing against each other. But, you know, he was a little Scottish man. He didn't give a rat's ass. He was just steadfast, masculine.
2 feet on the ground.
Alpha male. But then in the same token, you know, I'm sure you've watched the movie The Notebook. I watched him with my grandmother. So what happened in that movie, The Notebook, essentially happened to my grandparents. My nanny got Alzheimer's. He nursed her for 12 years, fed her dinner, her lunch, you know, everything every day in the hospital, gentleman with women, manners. So an alpha male, but a gentle man. He was definitely a man.
That's beautiful.
But yeah, so
great person to have.
Yeah, so I was very privileged to be able to witness that, and I think a lot of his attributes in that I've been very fortunate to do my best to live up to. So here I am, having a crack.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
And finally, someone who, famous or not, you would like for us to interview on the podcast.
Yeah, so two people spring to mind on that actually. One is, I'm not sure if you've come across Kim Morrison. Beautiful lady. I'm trying to think how I would explain her. Very open-minded sort of thinker. She has authored a few books. She's on the Sunshine Coast. Has a lot of hats, but I suppose the biggest one is around self-love and self-care.
Okay.
But I find she very much appeals to a male demographic as well, and a topic that is probably not generally connected with men. Beautiful soul, and I'll be honest with you, very funny. So if you want to laugh, she's one there. And the other one is a Tomu Watanabe, I think his surname is. He is a golf professional on the Sunshine Coast, and he has a company called the Sunshine Coast Golf Centre. And again, he has a very successful business around golfing and coaching golfing, and has some professional golfers working with him. But he is all about everything that's not golf.
Okay.
And I love that.
I love that as
so
well.
The psychological warfare of golf. And if we think about golf very quickly, those golfers have way too much time on their hands to be in competition, to be in their own minds, and actual time under tension in terms of the swing. I think we tried to figure it out one day. It was something like 2 minutes and something seconds when you total up all the swing time, all the work, and the rest is
mind.
But he loves it, and you've got to be careful with him. You have to rein him in. He'll go off into the clouds and tell you about all sorts of stuff, but well worth the chat.
They're brilliant. Thank you for those recommendations.
No, you're welcome.
We'll get them on this year for sure.
Oh, both. Yeah, you would not be disappointed. Yeah. Good people.
Jamie Milne, this has been something special.
Oh, mate,
and
thank you.
I really appreciate it, especially given that we are less than a week away from your attempt.
Yeah.
And we wish you all the best for that.
Richard,
and
thank you very much.
everything you've got going on, all the plates.
Mate, yeah. I'll take my 2,000 plates out the door. But mate, honestly, honour and a privilege. It's been great to meet you, mate, and you're very much an inspiration for me, honestly. So thank you. Man. Thanks, Richard.
That was another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. We hope you really enjoyed it. It's currently raining really heavily outside, so feel free to listen to it when you're on your way to buying an umbrella. Until next time, peace.